All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you to our 52 attendees and our 8 panelists here for our 2020 Public Policy Retreat. So I'd like to introduce our Governor of New Hampshire, Governor Chris Sununu. He was, congratulations, Governor, for being elected to a 3rd term. Previously, he was the CEO of Waterville Valley Ski Area and is a graduate of MIT. And with a degree in engineering, and currently lives in the community of Newfields. So welcome, Governor, and thank you for talking to us as realtors in the 2020 Public Policy Committee.
You're going to do the whole thing muted there for a minute. Well, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it, and obviously an absolute pleasure to be here. I think it's great that all this Zoom stuff really works, and it's, if anything, it actually sometimes increases participation with some of the different groups. But needless to say, we've had an interesting year. I could talk about 1,000 things. I'm sure I have a few different books in me. I'm a terrible writer, but if anyone ever wanted some good stories when this whole COVID thing is done, someone should pull some of these stories out of me. So a couple of things. I just want to take maybe 5 minutes and just kind of review where we are, like state of the state, because that obviously more than anything, I think, is what really impacts the real estate market. We can talk about relief funds and opportunities, stimulus opportunities, but at the end of the day, the overall health of the state, the health of the economy, and where we are with the COVID pandemic, I think drives more in terms of real estate opportunity than anything else, both on the commercial side as well as the residential side. Right now, we're in very good shape. There's no doubt about it. Relatively speaking, compared to the states around us, for sure, and compared to most of the rest of the country, from an economic standpoint, we're in very good shape. Everyone's COVID numbers are rising. We know that. There are things we can do. We've put the mask order in and things of that nature to help minimize the impact to hospitals and hopefully keep the fatality rate a little lower. Hopefully minimize the ability for the virus to enter some of our long-term care facilities where it can be very, very deadly. But we know the numbers are going to continue to rise probably over the next couple of weeks here. We're kind of in the middle of that very large surge that we predicted. We've always predicted was going to come, and it's coming. And frankly, I thought the numbers would be a little higher. So that's, in a way, we're doing better than we thought. I mean, the numbers are very high, but we're still doing better than we thought. So it's more than just riding it out. It's really staying disciplined through the end of the year. We have money. We have the CARES Act funds. I think we've appropriately allocated for PPE and testing, and now getting an early vaccine system up and running. The vaccine, as I think a lot of folks probably know by now, will be here sometime around the 16th or the 17th of December. It's just a first round. Probably only 10 or 15,000 individuals will be able to get that first shot that first week or so. And then maybe another 15 or 20,000 vials will come the week after that. And then slowly we'll start building into a capacity. Now, obviously, there's a long way to go between 15 and 20,000 doses and 1.35 million doses. And that's what January, February, March are going to be really all about. And those areas of highest need, in that being those individuals of highest risk, will have access to the vaccine first. The general, we'll get, we feel like we should be able to get to the general population, have enough vaccine for the general population. And by that, I mean, folks under 60 years old without any underlying, severe underlying health conditions. The rest of us, if you will likely have access to the vaccine probably in the March, April timeframe. The good news there is that by Memorial Day, I really think we're coming out, if not out of this, in that I think everyone my hope at least is that everyone will have wanted the vaccine, will have access to the vaccine. A lot of the mandates and things like that are coming off, but that's Memorial Day. I think it builds us for a potentially really, really great summer in 2021. But that's not the winter, right? So we still have to be very disciplined over the winter. When you look at where our revenues have come in at the state level, not that that is a direct predictor or indicator of the health of our economy, although it's a pretty good marker, we are already surpassing what we thought we'd be bringing in from last year. So we're doing better than we thought we would, which is really amazing. We still have a hole that was dug in early in the spring and in summer that we'll have to manage through. But the important message here is that I think we've done a very good job controlling our costs. The budget deficit isn't nearly as big as we thought it was going to be, and not nearly as big as any of our surrounding states. I mean, you go to Massachusetts, they're looking at billions in a budget deficit this year. I don't know how they're going to manage themselves out of that without massive new taxes and things of that nature. Ours is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 million out of a $13 billion budget, biennial budget. That's very, very manageable. So not only will we not be raising taxes and putting more burdens on individuals, I always say it's the worst thing you can do in an economic crisis is ask somebody from another buck out of their pocket. That's not what you should be doing to families and businesses. So we're taking just the opposite direction. We're going to cut taxes here. We're going to be cutting the meals and rooms tax, or at least that's what I'll be proposing. Hopefully the legislature will go along with me. The meals and rooms tax, the business profit tax, maybe even the interest. I'd like to start the process of really reducing the interest and dividends tax as well. We're at 5%, and I hate that tax, frankly. So if we can start that process. The reason that's important is because that really sends, I think, in many ways, a 180-degree message from what a lot of our surrounding states are going to be doing in the Northeast. We're saying that we're putting people first. We're putting businesses first. It isn't about just backfilling revenue holes in the government system. And that is making us a very attractive place to be. We have Amazon coming in. We have, SIG is expanding here. We have BAE doing their expanding. We have all these businesses expanding and growing and wanting to come here. We have a half a dozen very significant companies that confidentially are looking at very large expansion projects all across the state, not just in the southern tier, but up north, right, in Coas and Carroll and Grafton County, which is great from an economic health standpoint. So the good news is I think we're in very good shape. I think there will be a stimulus bill of some sort. I think most states will have to use that stimulus money just to backfill their revenues, where we won't. We'll be able to actually invest it in businesses and infrastructure the way it was designed, and create jobs with it, right? A little bit for the vaccine distribution and a little bit to make sure that the more traditional COVID-related costs are taken care of, but also potentially hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure investment, whether it's more into the clean drinking water, upgrades into wastewater treatment plants, which lowers property taxes and makes cities and towns more attractive, roads and bridges, local money for roads and bridges, all in the name of putting that cash out there and lowering the property tax base at a localized level. I think that's a huge opportunity for us going forward. It's not about creating bigger government. It's really about getting that cash back down. So all of that is to say that we're in good position. I think if and when the stimulus comes, I don't know exactly what it will look like. I think we have a very good plan to spend it wisely and spend it in the right areas, one-time money for one-time infrastructure investment, which makes us all a little more better off in the long run. Legislatively, there's a couple other interesting things coming down the path. I proposed a housing bill last year, which kind of got pushed to the side because of COVID. We're going to bring that bill back, which creates really incentives, not with a stick, but with a carrot, if you will, incentives for better partnerships between businesses and localities to invest in housing, to invest in that workforce product that we desperately, desperately need. With all these businesses coming in, all these jobs are being created, we all know the biggest barrier is still going to be housing. Chuck Moore, Senator Moore, who I believe is going to be with you later this morning, he brought up, I think, a great idea that we're trying to implement, using a form of tax credit, if you will, to incentivize better investments specifically around housing. I had Jeb Bradley in my office yesterday specifically talking about another cash investment into the housing trust fund. So I think we did 5 or 10 million last year. I think we're going to look to do something like that this year. So making these investments just for the overall health of the state and making sure we're investing in the areas of highest need, and we know that is housing. We did a lot with the CARES Act. The CARES Act stuff was really interesting. I mean, I created this $35 million fund to help with things like rental assistance and mortgage assistance and all of that. Because we are able to keep our economy fairly strong, I want to say very few people took advantage of it, but much fewer people took advantage of that program than we originally had anticipated. We did it through the CAP agencies, right? Because those are usually where the 5 CAP agencies around the state really address those individuals and those families that have those very high needs. But I mean, millions was taken up, but I thought it was going to be 20 or 30 million, but I want to say something like maybe 5 or 10 million, not even, was utilized as part of that program. Now, by federal rule, that program disappears on December 31st, I believe. All the money, we have to spend all that CARES Act money by December 31st. Hopefully, maybe another round of that program could be reinstituted with the new stimulus money. I mean, that's why they're trying to do a bill now, and so that we can bridge. We don't have this gap come January 1 with everything from CARES Act costs to stimulus funds or whatever it is. We obviously used a lot of our CARES Act money as a stimulus. Most states did not do that. We spent more money in little old New Hampshire. We spent more dollars, not per capita, just more dollars than any other state in investing in businesses and housing with our Main Street relief funds and nonprofit relief funds. We were the only state in the country to even try a self-employment fund, and it actually worked very, very well. And all of that was in the name of getting those individuals and those businesses the cash to keep paying their bills, their mortgage, their commercial real estate, whatever it was going to be. I know a lot of folks wanted us to help with landlord assistance, but again, we created the rental assistance bill, and we even allowed landlords to go help those individuals fill out the paperwork. I've had landlords come to me and say, "You're not doing anything for us," and I keep explaining, we put $35 million in a fund so your tenants could get relief. Walk them right down in there, fill out the application with them, and make sure they get their money, and then they can pay their rent. So we couldn't do anything directly for landlords for a variety of reasons, but we could help their tenants. And so we're trying to get the landlords to be part of that process. And like I said, the fund wasn't taken up. There's still time to do it, I think, maybe a week or so left. But I was shocked with how few people understood that was the point. People wanted us to give money to replace lost revenues at a town level. We weren't allowed to do that. But that's why I created the Main Street Relief Fund, so these businesses could have the money to pay their property taxes. So again, the property taxes that were coming in and that we saw in June were very robust, actually. As we were looking at some of the preliminary numbers for December. They look good, not great, but pretty good. So we didn't see nearly the drop in property tax remittance that we thought we were going to get earlier in the year. So, and given the strength of the economy overall, we anticipate December's property tax remittances to be just fine, frankly, overall. So that is just another sign that we're in good shape. But we really need folks to work at the localized level with their planning boards, with their selectmen, with their town managers. And just to be very blunt about it, one thing COVID has done is made me not jaded. That's not the right word. But I just don't have any time in my day, so I just try to cut right to the point. These town planners have to stop thinking like it's 1995. It is so old school, antiquated thinking, and it's bringing my state down, and it drives us all crazy. That fact that they won't move forward on the right type of product for their community that meets the needs of the businesses that are paying their taxes to keep everything floating in their town. The fact that folks don't get this cycle really drives me crazy. There's got to be a balance. I get it. But, with all these businesses coming in, with all this economic opportunity come in, that's going to dry up really quick if these towns keeps having this. It's one thing to say, we don't want a prison in my backyard, right? These NIMBYs that say, well, we don't want something like that in our backyard. Okay, that's argumentative, of course. But it's getting to the point where they're saying, we don't want an apartment in our backyard. God forbid. I'm sorry. Everyone has to be part of a bigger solution here. And those that aren't part of that are going to be left behind. Look at the towns that are making those kinds of investments in that middle of the road housing. The Rochester, they're coming out of it really strong. Where was Rochester 3 or 4 years ago, and where are they today? It's night and day. Londonderry, Derry, Franklin, coming out of the doldrums up in Franklin, and a lot of business in kind of Main Street businesses coming back into Franklin because they're also making sure that they have flexibility in that housing and making investments and getting that very older housing stock updated and upgraded, if you will. Everything from weatherization to just taking advantage of some of the programs we have at the state and working with HUD to make those investments around it. So, everyone really needs to be part of that solution, to be sure. Another big issue with real estate that is directly related to real estate, but a lot of folks, I think you guys get it, but a lot of folks don't make the connection, is schools, right? What happens with schools has such a direct impact with the real estate market. Millennials and Gen Zs are simply having fewer kids later in life, which means our roles are going down. Our population's going up, businesses are coming in, but the rolls are going down. And then again, you have these cities and towns that are saying, well, we don't want young families in our town, too expensive. You guys are going to be left so far behind if you keep up with that mentality. I really believe that. At the end of the day, the state isn't going to pay for a kid that isn't in your classroom. And then you compound that with what happened with COVID and a lot of people running to kids and families running to private schools. You have way less kids in the classroom. If you looked at what we're budgeting for the Education Trust Fund this year, it's way down. It's more dollars per child than any administration in history, but the overall number is down because there's simply less kids in our public schools right now. Now, I think every family needs to have the option of schools and whatnot, but what towns really need to start doing is thinking 10 years down the road. Is there the ability and willingness to combine different districts? That might be a good idea in some areas. It might be not a good idea in some areas. I'm not going to, say exactly that every district needs to consolidate. Are you using your facilities and your buildings to the best of their ability and maximizing their usage? Or do you have, 3 elementary schools that are all half filled? We have situations like that. That's a colossal waste of money. And without a doubt, this legislature is going to start really looking at getting back to maybe the concept of ESAs that I put forth, the education savings accounts, where especially low-income families simply have more choice on where their dollars are spent, where their state allocation of education trust funds are going out of the education trust fund is going to be spent. It's not the best way to say it, but the concept is this: why should only rich kids get to go to private school? Just think of it that way. This program would say those up to 300% of the federal poverty level with a cap, so no individual district gets hurt too much, maybe 1 or 2 kids out of the smaller districts, maybe a few more out of the larger districts. Those individuals just have a little more flexibility to have some choice if the traditional schools aren't meeting their needs. And I think the average person, the average family that never thought about school choice, never thought about this, there's so many families out there in districts, whether you're in Manchester or you're over in, the hotbed issue right now is Winnacunnet and over in Hampton in the Seacoast or the Exeter area, where families are saying, I'm paying all these property taxes and my kid can't even go to school. What's going on? Why is that? Right? People want a return on that investment. They want to see that return on that investment. And that I bring that up because that's a very, I think, significant paradigm shift in terms of how not just the legislature will be discussing education funding, but how the public is going to be participating in this. I don't know exactly where it's going to go, frankly, but I just know it's going to be a very hot topic, and rightly so. And without a doubt, I think everyone agrees that something probably has to change within the system. Running the system the exact same way you've been running it since 1975, I don't think you should run the system the same way you've been running since 2010. So you got to be willing to innovate, change, break the mold a little bit. It doesn't mean you break down the system. It doesn't mean that at all. We have the best public schools in the country. I think, we're ranked in the top, consistently ranked in the top 5. We're very proud of that. We put a lot of money in our schools, both at a local and state level, where we have very high ranked schools. We have wonderful teachers. It's not about breaking down a broken system. The system is not broken. It's really just about allowing those individuals to have choice for their families while maintaining the high quality that you have. And it isn't just dollars that dictate that. Everyone seems to think it's just about the money. It's not the dollars that dictate that. It's also how you innovate and restructure at both a localized and state level. And I think that's just a lot of the work that we want to maintain local control, but the legislature is going to definitely have a big say in that. The other big thing that I wanted to touch upon a little bit, and I know it affects everything from housing values and what's happening in communities, is clean drinking water. It's been a passionate issue of myself and obviously Chuck Morse, who you're going to hear from. He's been leading the charge on the Clean Drinking Water Fund. He's done a phenomenal job there, putting literally, I think we have 275 million out of the fund, and then when you add that to what can be matched or other loan programs, you're looking somewhere between 500 and 750 million minimum invested in clean drinking water projects across New Hampshire over the next few years, and that's awesome. That is all infrastructure stuff, and that's just a huge boost, if you will, to those communities, to those homeowners, to those land values, and frankly, just making sure that the problem that we have with PFOAs and PFOSs, the problem that exists doesn't become a crisis, right? I knew Governor Snyder in the former Governor Snyder from Michigan, who had to deal with the Flint, Michigan crisis, water crisis 5-6 years ago. And I mean, that was a very big deal. And that was just disastrous for the state. They handled it wrong. It wasn't just him, it was a lot of his team really that they really just handled it wrong. And again, being an environmental engineer, I'm quite passionate about clean drinking water anyway. So we have some funds. There's a huge opportunity and making sure that we're doubling down on those investments. What we've been able to do, I think, in show of a model in the southern tier around, the Manchester connection into Salem and Atkinson and Plastow and that whole southern connector water project has been phenomenal. But there's been 20 other projects where we've made these investments across the state where we're either protecting water sources, where we're actually putting pipe in the ground, where we're upgrading pump stations, whatever it might be. Huge opportunity there. So if you're working in a particular area, keep an eye on that stuff, because again, that stuff just has a real impact on land values. And obviously the Merrimack, Bedford, Litchfield area is a hotbed for those issues as well. And then working, of course, out at Pease with the clean drinking water issues and the Coakley landfill issue on the seacoast. We're on top of it and we have the funds to deal with it. Bob Scott's been doing a great job at DES. And then the last thing I brought up very briefly, I still think there's a huge opportunity to take some of the stimulus money and make big investments in wastewater treatment plants, which many of which across the state are just hitting they're aging out, if you will. They need upgrades. And we're not talking about $2 million of upgrades. Sometimes we're talking about $50 million of upgrades per plant. That's a lot of money, but we should have a lot of opportunity to help offset those costs with this stimulus money. And that just, again, lowers property taxes, lowers a water or wastewater bill for a water or village, a water or sewer village district. And again, just that's the whole point of the stimulus. Get it out and get it to help folks and get a return on that investment, not with big government at the state level, but more at the localized level. So a lot going on. I feel obviously, we've kind of just been able to scratch the surface a little. 25 minutes here. And so I apologize for not being a little more detailed. I mean, I'm happy to take any questions if you guys have any questions, but, there's a lot to look forward to, but we still all obviously have to stay very diligent and vigilant, if that's the word, about how we manage ourselves through COVID. Keep an eye on some of this legislation that's going to be coming forward. I think there's just still huge opportunity with both cutting taxes and making these one-time investments with the stimulus funds. And we'll just try to keep I think we've done a pretty good job of being as transparent as we possibly can, where the money is, how it's going out, not just through the press conferences, but, the transparency website that Gopher set up, all of these resources we're trying to put into transparency so that folks really do not just believe it, but really are coming together with this, right? We are all in this together. I mean, it's one thing to say, it's another thing to do it, but let us know. I mean, let us know if you're seeing things out there, if things aren't making sense, or you think there's opportunities, that we're missing. We try our best up here in Concord. For 3 or 4 months, there was literally 12 people sitting in my office. And to be blunt about it, we were running everything. But now we have more resources. The legislature is coming back. That's all going to be very, very helpful in terms of having a bigger and broader team for communication.
So, Governor, you touched upon a lot of the questions that came up. I have 2 other ones that I would ask you to touch on. The first, very specific to real estate. We've talked a lot about broadband access for our employers. It's now becoming much more important. Look, all of us sitting here on Zoom, to our kids and the employees. So broadband access is one point. The other one that's a little bit more subtle is as these lockdowns affect our neighboring states and the quarantining rules, how do you see that impacting some of our communities that are more dependent on tourism? So sure. If you could just touch on broadband and tourism, that would be great.
Great. Perfect. Broadband. We're one of the only states that created the broadband fund. I put $50 million in, but because of the federal constraints on it, you had to actually finish the projects by, I think, December 31st. So they're working very vigilantly. I think about 14 projects were able to meet that time frame, and we put about $15 million out, which was great. I'm already planning with the stimulus funds, and Jeb Bradley is on board with me because he's been helping us out. I'm already pre-buying fiber. I'm already putting the orders in. I'm pre-buying thousands and thousands of miles of fiber, because when that stimulus comes, I just totally forgot, that is one of the top things we're going to make the investments in, making sure that high-speed internet is available to as many, many folks as possible. The other thing to keep an eye on too is I cut, if I may, I'm not just here to pat myself on the back, but 3 years ago, I cut one of the best, if not the best deal in the country with AT&T as part of FirstNet. FirstNet is the emergency communication system, kind of the nationalized emergency communication system. Well, I cut a deal with AT&T, unlike any other state. They're putting 50 cell towers in across the state, mostly in places like Coos and Grafton, Sullivan and Cheshire County, where the connection isn't that great. But I tell you, nothing increases a home value or sells a home when somebody walks in and turns their phone on and says, okay, thank God I have a connection. And nothing causes a tougher problem when then someone walks into a home and says, I can't live here. I can't even get a cell connection. But these 50 towers going across the state are going to vastly just increase individuals' ability to connect. And that is so important as you bring up. So we're already pre-buying fiber. We got deals going. We got Consolidated and Comcast and the co-ops all ready to go. So if and when the stimulus money comes, we are literally way ahead of the game. Sorry, the next one was also, tourism. I have no plans right now. Let me back up. Everyone has high levels of COVID right now. And across New England, we're all increasing at approximately the same rate. So we're doing things to manage it to make sure it doesn't get too out of control, obviously. But we're all going to have high levels of COVID for the next few weeks and maybe the next couple months. We need to have a strong economy too. If you're going to have one, you might as well have the other. And so I do not have any plans in shutting things down. I don't have any plans in contracting things with, economically, because the guidance documents we put in place, they really do work when they're followed. They actually were designed, I think, very, very well. And when people follow those rules, they work. When people don't, when they get COVID fatigue, they kind of get lazy a little bit. And then problems arise. As all these other states are shutting things down around us, I think it only helps us. Frankly, I don't want them to shut down. Don't misunderstand me at all. I think what Massachusetts, Vermont, and Maine are doing are very detrimental to their economies, and I don't want to see them do badly. But without a doubt, let's look at ski season, right? The ski season is important because it drives hospitality, hotels, restaurants, the ski destinations themselves. New Hampshire's preseason sales are through the roof. Vermont's, Maine's are down because they're shutting everything down. Why would you buy a season pass to Killington right now when if you don't live in Vermont, you can't go? So, and 80% or 75% of Vermont's, I think it's actually 80% of Vermont's ski season comes from out-of-staters, right? 50% of ours comes from out-of-staters. We're not saying no. Now, Charlie Baker saying if you go to New Hampshire, you got to take a test to come back in. We'll see how well that holds up and whether people really adhere to that. I think that's a bit overkill myself. I think people are still going to come. And I think what we saw in the summer, remember how booming our summer tourism was? I think it stands to reason that I think winter could be just as successful, frankly, because folks want to get out. If you're going to do skiing or outdoor activities, it's the place to do it. Hockey and ice skating might have a bit more trouble because they haven't managed themselves as well. But outdoor events like cross-country skiing or downhill skiing, some of the winter sports, snowmobiling, I think they're all going to be very, very strong this year for us.
Well, thank you, Governor. I understand from your staff that unfortunately we have to let you go. We know that you have other obligations.
I can do this all day. I'm not allowed to, but I can do it all day.
Bob, did you have anything else to sign off on?
No, thank you very much.
Yes, I have one thing, if I might.
You bet, Ken.
Governor, I just, on behalf of all the realtors in the state of New Hampshire, wanted to thank you for making us essential workers early on in the process. It turned out to be one of the most dynamic years in real estate. We all wish we had more houses to sell, but I just wanted to thank you before you depart.
No, I appreciate that. And look, I'm thrilled you guys had a great year. I mean, I heard it across the board. Y'all did very well, or you should have. If you're in real estate and you didn't do well this year, I don't know, maybe you should run for office or something, find another career because everyone's doing well. But look, we just tried to create the opportunity we could create and do it the right way and based on reason and soundness and data and science. That's all. So I'm thrilled you guys did well. Keep doing great because it means a lot for all these businesses coming in. And like I said, we're bringing business all across the state. So no matter whether you're in Rockingham, Hillsborough, or you're up in Coos and Carroll and and Grafton, I tell you, there's businesses coming everywhere and they need the housing. And keep working with those planning boards, work with those local communities to make the point to get the product that not just that they want, it's the product that the people want that has to be designed, built, and permitted around. So good luck with all that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor.
You bet.